Dare to Stare, unveiling the shadows of fear on Fear Files.
Let me take you back to a few months ago when I decided to dip my toes back into the dating pool after being single for what felt like forever. I thought, why not give those dating apps a shot? What could go wrong, right? Oh, how naive I was. So there I was, swiping left and right like a madman, trying to find someone who could potentially be the one. And then I matched with this woman. Let's call her Sarah. She seemed nice enough, and after chatting for a bit, we decided to meet up. We settled on Disneyland because, hey, who doesn't love a bit of magic, right? I remember the excitement coursing through me as I waited for her outside the gates. And when she finally arrived, well, let's just say she was even more beautiful in person. We spent the day wandering around the park, going on rides, and just enjoying each other's company. It felt like a fairy tale. But then, as the day turned into night and the crowds began to thin out, things took a dark turn. We were strolling through one of the quieter areas of the park when suddenly, out of nowhere, I felt a sharp pain in my side. I looked down to see blood gushing from a wound. I staggered back, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when I saw him. It was a man, lurking in the shadows, a sinister grin plastered across his face. Before I could react, he lunged at me again, stabbing me repeatedly. I screamed for help, but it was as if we were the only ones in the park. And then, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by worried faces. The doctors told me that I was lucky to be alive, that if it weren't for a quick-thinking neighbor who heard my screams and called the police, I might not have made it. But Sarah, she wasn't so lucky. They found her lifeless body not far from where I was attacked. The police launched an investigation, and eventually they caught the guy responsible. Turns out he was a deranged stalker who'd been following Sarah for weeks. He saw us together at the park and, well, you know the rest. And that's the story of how a magical day at Disneyland turned into a nightmare I'll never forget. So yeah, maybe dating apps aren't the best idea after all. But hey, at least I lived to tell the tale, right?
So, this is my first time sharing something like this, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. It all started when I graduated from college, full of hopes and dreams, ready to take on the world. But little did I know, the world had some dark corners I never imagined. I got this job interview at this small town, felt like the perfect opportunity to kickstart my career. The interview went well, or at least I thought so. The guy interviewing me seemed friendly, charming even. He said I got the job and I was over the moon. But then things started to get weird. He kept complimenting me, saying things that made me uncomfortable. And when I tried to brush it off, he would just laugh it off like it was a joke. I started to get a bad feeling about him. But I needed the job so badly, I tried to ignore it. Fast forward a few weeks, and I was working late one night. Everyone else had gone home, and it was just me and my boss left in the office. He asked if I wanted to grab a drink to celebrate a successful project. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed. We ended up at this fancy hotel bar, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. He started getting handsy, making advances that made my skin crawl. I tried to push him away, but he was relentless. And before I knew it, we were in his hotel room, and I was trapped. I tried to reason with him, to make him see sense, but he wouldn't listen. He said he had power over me, that he could ruin my career if I didn't do what he wanted. I felt sick to my stomach, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Days turned into weeks, and I lost all sense of time. I was his prisoner, forced to do things I'm too ashamed to even talk about. I prayed for someone to save me, but no one ever came. I was alone, trapped in the shadows with a predator lurking in the darkness. Eventually, I managed to escape, but the scars he left behind will never fully heal. I'm sharing my story now in the hopes that it might save someone else from suffering the same fate. Trust your instincts and never let anyone make you feel less than you're worth. Because once you're trapped in the shadows, it's hard to find your way back into the light.
This girl, let's call her Emily, was playing with her friends near the edge of the forest one day. They were having a great time, laughing and running around, when suddenly Emily disappeared. Just like that, she was gone. Her friends searched frantically, calling out her name, but there was no sign of her anywhere. The whole town rallied together to search for her. We combed through every inch of that forest, calling out her name until our voices were hoarse. Days turned into nights, and still, there was no sign of Emily. Her parents were beside themselves with worry, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Then, just when we were starting to lose hope, a miracle happened. Police stumbled upon a cave deep in the heart of the forest, and there she was, sitting inside, smiling like nothing had happened. But when they got closer, they noticed something strange about her eyes. They were completely white, like she was blind or something. Can you imagine the shock they must have felt? I mean, here they were, expecting the worst. Suddenly Emily's sitting there, seemingly unharmed, but with these eerie white eyes. They rushed her to the hospital, but the doctors couldn't explain it. They ran all sorts of tests, but there was nothing physically wrong with her. Here's where it gets even weirder. When they asked Sarah what happened, she just smiled and said she didn't remember anything. It's like she blacked out or something. But how could she wander off into the forest, end up in a cave, and not remember a single thing? The whole town's been buzzing about it ever since. Some people think it's a miracle, that Emily was protected by some higher power. Others think it's a mystery, that something dark and sinister is lurking in those woods. But one thing's for sure, the story of the lost girl of Whispering Pines will haunt us for a long time to come. Thank you for braving the unknown with us. Until next time, stay haunted.